college together at Dartmouth, and then we went to graduate school at USC to study film, and actually made a film together, a modest little action film, and have been friends for too many years. So, Steve, it's great to get together with you tonight. Unmute yourself, Steve. Lower left corner.
How's that? I got it.
That's good. Yeah.
Same here, by the way.
Okay. Steve, the last time we spoke, both of us had fewer gray hairs. So it's great to catch up with you.
I don't care what color they are.
Yeah, right. As long as they're still there. Okay. The Reiners. Hello. Joanne, Arlene. You'll have to apologize to Esty. The Weinbergs are here. Arthur's here. Fern, my trusty second, who will moderate tonight and call on you when you raise your hand, either visually or in the chat or the participant list. Natalie Shapiro, hi. Karen and Brad Ellison, regulars. Is your brother Jeff with us tonight? Yeah, okay, I'll get to him. Cindy Lederer, thank you for joining. Ray Bowser, regulars. Hi, Roz and Jerry. Roy Logan, great to have you, Roy. Melissa Fortsiat, she's our special 35-year-old focus group, even if she's not 35 or more, but she keeps us honest, so we don't all seem like Luddites. Randy Taylor, you're new to the group. You want to unmute yourself and tell us why you love movies and why you're here?
Oh, I've seen a few of your movies before. I'm a member of Wilshire Boulevard Temple, and I'm just trying to catch up, just trying to stay current with the movies you're saying.
Well, glad you joined us. They're not all current releases, but they're all relevant releases. So it's a way of staying current, I think, with the times. LA's Lady Madonna, I think you're the song lady, right?
Yes, sir. I'll be playing for the Annenberg Performing Arts, representing them with Mr. Andrew Pacelli, the pianist, on Rodeo Drive tomorrow between 1 and 2. Singing and playing music for my grandchildren. Yes, I am. And I'm going to become a member of Wilshire Boulevard Temple very soon.
Great, great. Was not your late husband a member of Wilshire Boulevard?
No, sir. No, Moshe, no. We got married in Miami, and sadly he's buried there in Miami. But
I see. I apologize for. I remember you chimed in once before, so it's good to have you back.
No worries. No worries, Jim. It's okay. No, it's a small world. No worries.
If you want to post in the chat the location and how people could witness what you're going to perform tomorrow night, go right ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Steve Zimmerman, a regular. By the way, Hannah Gohl is our person who makes it all happen at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. She's all things to all people there, and sort of is the den mother for all the Zoom groups, which are many. Steve Zimmerman, hi, good to see you. Bruce Green and his wife Janet Keller are with us for a first time. Hello, Janet. We haven't met yet. Bruce is a very accomplished film editor. I won't embarrass him with all his extensive resumes. Some films your children and grandchildren may have seen, like The Princess Diaries and other very high-profile films like that. Bruce also teaches at USC along with me in the graduate school. And Bruce, it's great to have you with us, and please chime in anytime you want.
The only thing I'll add is that Janet and I were married by Morley Feinstein.
Yes, who was the late rabbi at University Synagogue before he retired early. Mm-hmm. And that's how Bruce and I kind of bonded together again after not seeing each other for many years. Carol Ginsberg, I know your email. Have you been part of the group before?
I have
Carol?
not. This is
Carol
my first.
Oh, okay. Okay, tell us about your love of movies so we can vet everything you say.
I have loved.
What appeals to you about the group?
I'm sorry? What is?
Tell us what appeals to you about the group.
That it's mature people who want to watch the same films that I'm going to watch and share their ideas about those films.
That's great. We'll try and be as mature as you expect us to be, but Michael Ruby, I don't know you, Michael, but I'm glad you're with us. Why are you here tonight?
I'm a university synagogue. I love movies. And whenever I see a movie like the other night, where I got to go to the internet afterwards and kind of read about it, I figure it's a really thought-provoking movie, and I wanted to hear the discussion.
Great. It really is a fascinating movie and got under my skin as well. Who else? Susie is hiding tonight. Joanne is also hiding, but glad to have both of you with us. Risa Davids with a granddaughter, I think. That's a still picture. But Risa's a contributing member. And Nina Saxon, this is a first for you. Do you want to introduce yourself to the group? You may hide your wretched past if you want, but go ahead, Nina. Okay. Nina's an accomplished film professional as well, has had a long career in feature films, and she can tell you about it later if you want. So sorry I'm late. I had to finish watching this film for the third time, and it grows on me. This is the third time I've seen it, and I was
Jim, you are freezing.
hesitant to show it. There's no Jewish content. Yes, I am. Is this any better?
Yeah.
Okay. My internet connection is in and out sometimes. This film is really all about how we connect with other people and how we connect with ourselves. And that's why I thought it was appropriate for the group. Because if there's any Jewish value or any humanistic value, it's what do we mean to each other and how do we learn to live with each other? And this film is very instructive in many ways. I hope you all enjoyed it, but I want to say this about the film itself. You know, we've all seen many films that deal with flashbacks. They help explain the backstory, the history of a character. We saw After the Rain, the South African film about the blonde soldier who's like a terrible racist, but not really at heart because he had a childhood Black friend. And his story is told in flashback, but also through his present situation. This film is very interesting because when I first thought of it, I thought, is this a mystery? Because we don't know what happened to these people in the dark past and we're slowly brought up to speed. Is it a thriller? Is there some terrible dark secret? Well, there's a terrible secret, but it's not a thriller. But we are kept in the dark throughout this whole history. And I think this film differs from a lot of other films in the genre of slowly teasing us into the past so that we understand the present, in that we have an ally in this film. And I want to kick this off with a hard question. Who is our ally in this film? Who is our stand-in for the viewer in the film? Who is as clueless as we are? Anybody want to chase that down? Frank. You're muted, Frank.
Could it be the first wife? The wife he divorced.
Margaret. Why do you think she's our stand-in?
Well, he's presenting this to her and revealing the story to her, and she is reacting, and we might identify with her reaction possibly.
Well, she just says, she says you should ask yourself why you and I are just going over this for the first time after having been married for X number of years or decades. You know, she's saying, hold a mirror to yourself, buddy. You know, this really is a function of who you are, but she doesn't say it quite like that, and he doesn't get it. Roz Weissman's.
I think actually, Jim, why don't you, I'm monitoring. Let me, before that, Bruce and then Roz.
Okay. Who's next?
Bruce. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. I think Jim Broadbent.
It's hard to hear you, Bruce.
Oh, it's hard to hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I'll lean forward. Is good. I think Jim Broadbent's the stand-in for the audience because he's the one that's discovering things and doesn't know what's going on.
Right. He like. Go ahead.
Watching him, and I think the film is a lot about how we don't really know anything. I mean, and the film is, and what's hidden from us and what we can't know. And I think the structure of the film, the editing of the film, everything plays into that.
It does. You remember what Adrian Finn says about history in the very beginning, though.
Yes.
One of the first scenes we see him. We can't know about history because we weren't there.
But
And
the structure of the film, there are a number of times in the film where you see people looking at something off camera and you never cut to what they're looking at. You know, they talk about what they're looking at, but you never find out what they're looking at. And I think that's quite on purpose, that we just don't see what's going on all the time and we can't know.
yeah, it's coy, and it's part of the tension that the filmmaker sets up for us to ask us a question that doesn't get answered right away, but keeps us interested because we want to know the answer. Who's next, Fern?
Roz and then Brad. Roz, unmute yourself.
Yes, you're Roz. Unmute yourself.
Is it
Lean
Roz,
in.
Roz Rabo or Roz
There you go.
Weissman?
Oh,
Roz Weissman. Roz Rabo, did you want to speak as well?
No, I
Okay.
did, I changed my mind.
Okay. Roz Weissman first,
I think
and then
Jim,
Brad.
Jim Brobeck was the
Lean in, Roz.
let's see, can you see me? No.
yes.
Yes.
It's good that you don't need to see me. Anyway, I think that Jim was in for us, and his ex-wife, I thought was interesting. She didn't know any of this herself. She's getting this information for the first time, and I found that kind of interesting. I loved the movie, and I thought I had seen it before, and I didn't. Wasn't there another movie with him and what's her name? The main
Charlotte Rampling?
Yeah, wasn't there another movie with them?
Maybe you're thinking about 45.
Yes, I am.
45 years. Yeah, it was Tom Courtenay. And
Oh.
we're going to see that. We're going to see that going forward. She's such a wonderful actress.
Yes, I thought I had seen this, but I
Yeah.
loved the movie, and I loved everything about it.
She does so much with so little in this.
Yes,
and
she
it's
does.
all understated or unstated. Great.
I hope we'll get back to talking about her because I had a different feeling about it, but I don't think this is the moment. Brad wants to speak, and Natalie.
Yeah, Jim, I want to go back to the Jewish element in the film because I think there was a very pronounced one, actually. And that is this concept of sins being transmitted from generation to generation. Is that the letter that he writes is a curse, and that curse then devolves to future generations, and that we hear about that frequently in the Torah. And of course, we hear it in Greek mythology, the house of Atreus, and the curse on that house. And there is a curse here that becomes revealed to us, the sin of the mother having sex with Adrian, and the fruit of that. So I think there's a very powerful Jewish theme in this movie.
I agree that Anthony Tony labors under his sin as he begins to rediscover it. It's universal. It's not just Jewish, but this is something we were talking about earlier in Torah study and in past weeks about passing the sin from generation to generation. And I think the generation is young Tony to mature Tony. You know, his daughter is fully with it and kind of is used to dad being a Luddite, an emotional Luddite. Forget about the computer and the cell phone that he doesn't have. It's like he just doesn't get it. And in my description of the film, I said, the guy just doesn't have an intuitive sense of what other people are feeling. And if you look at all the scenes with his wife, Margaret, he's amazed at how much this guy doesn't know. And looking at it for the third time, I realized no wonder she divorced him. Who could live with a guy like this who's so in a cloud? And not mean, loving as much as he can be, loyal, but just doesn't have a feel for other people. And it's not even that he's so egocentric, because yes, he wants to be a poet, and God knows what he did before he became an antique camera salesman. But this guy.
You're so funny. I love you. You're just amazing. I don't love you like your wife loves you, but I love your humor.
Okay. It helps sometimes. Please write a letter to my wife about that. So he's clueless. And Bruce, the reason I brought up him as a stand-in for ourselves, because our measure of understanding this deep, dark secret and the hidden history of this group of people, it's like we're witnessing. I didn't want to get to this now, but maybe I should, because it'll color the rest of our conversation. We are making judgments about him all the way through the film. Is he smart? Is he sensitive? Is he intuitive? Is he stupid? For me, it's not a thriller just ends with, oh, the mystery solved, right? Not necessarily humanistic or emotional. Oh, it was a great ride. And how great is a Margaret Atwood short story, or Agatha Christie? It's all wrapped up at the end. I think at the end of this film, and I rarely talk about endings this early in the conversation, but isn't the measure of this film the change in him? Because of what the unraveling of the mystery does to him, and in a way to us. So there's this empathy, and maybe we're still a little bit ahead of him at the end. We're smarter and wiser and more sensitive. But this is what's unique about this film, is that the thriller has a human component. It's not just the facts of the matter, but the emotional cost of his realizing how in the dark he was, and maybe how in the dark he was his whole life, about other people's feelings. And this to me is, I don't want to say it's a very Jewish quality, but it's a humanistic value to see things the way other people do, devoid of yourself. And he was not capable of that, because he was into her rejection of him, and the friend that betrayed the other three guys because he killed himself and nobody knew why, and he was in love, but they didn't know with whom. His sense of betrayal was totally self-centered. And he realized, oh my God, the pain was entirely somebody else's. Sarah, the mother who fathered this, the mother who bore this child who is intellectually challenged, that we meet 30 minutes from the end of the movie. So we're in the dark for the first hour. And Charlotte Rampling, who doesn't believe how clueless this guy is. He just doesn't know. And she can't share her pain with him.
How would he know?
I don't. So you're saying we shouldn't hold him responsible?
I didn't like the film, and I was baffled by why she was enraged at him. I couldn't see any way that he would have known, and I'm just wondering how you think. I'm glad to hear a lot of people liking it, because I can learn from that, but I don't understand how he would have known.
Okay, so do you think she should have told him, revealed everything up front?
Well, no, I just think she shouldn't have been angry at him, because he had no way to know that.
Well, I don't know if it was anger or
what did he do?
Well, he wrote the letter.
A very nasty letter.
That letter was
a nasty letter. In the scheme of things, it was pretty minor.
Not to them.
Well, I don't think they had bigger problems than his letter. They had a mother who was sleeping with the daughter's boyfriend, got pregnant, had a child who was very disabled.
Yeah.
His letter was like a big nothing.
Unless it was part of the sequence of events.
Arthur, are you saying that it caused something to happen?
It might have caused something to happen.
What might that have been?
We can't be sure. We can't be sure.
Okay, but what might it have been? Those who believe
we don't know whether, as a result of that letter, Adrian felt so badly about having caused this breakup in their friendship because of his relationship with Veronica, that he stopped seeing Veronica and took up with her mother.
Well, it could have been simultaneous.
Or that's right. Or he felt so guilty about all that he was doing that it was instrumental in his suicide.
Yeah, I suspect that.
I think that's how Anthony took it, that he may have caused his friend's suicide.
So Anthony may have been exaggerating his importance in the story because he wrote that awful letter,
Right.
And Margaret condemned it. But Fern, it's a great point you bring up. How could he have known? But would there be a film if he had known everything from the beginning? No.
No, that's why I thought why I didn't like the film. It was based on a premise that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Natalie's been wanting to say something. Unmute, Natalie.
Well, to me, I didn't watch it 2 times. When I watched it the first time, the scene in the classroom with the professor who was throwing the ball to each of the students for the answer, right at the beginning, that was the answer that was told at that meeting, because each of these boys who answered the question had their own idea of, when he just threw out the question about history, how do you know something has happened? And then finally, when they got to the boy who kills himself, he gives the right answer. He gives the answer that tells you what's going to happen in the end. And I don't remember the exact words, perhaps some of you do, but what he was saying was, there's no way we can ever answer this history question of yours, because only the person who was there at the time that something happened knows what happens. Everything else is all made up. And that very often is the answer to when people get together and talk about things that happened a long time ago in the family or with a friend or when they were at camp or wherever. And it's never, ever the truth. The truth is only with the person who experienced it, he, her, or he himself. So right there at the beginning, we know something happened with this young boy, which is why he gave this answer. And we had to wait all through the film to the very end to find out what it was. So I loved the film. I thought it was not really a mystery, but I thought it pulled itself all together well at the end.
Okay, but you didn't know when Adrian says we can't know history because he hadn't had the affair.
It's hard to hear you.
With her mother.
Sorry.
He was responding to girlfriend. It presages what happens. How are the others? Everybody looks frozen.
No, everybody's okay. You were frozen.
Okay. Well, I have no intuitive sense of what other people are feeling like Tony. So in the classroom, he had no idea this was going to happen to him as well.
But what he said in the classroom
that a girlfriend
is
would get
exactly
pregnant.
what happened
Almost
through the film.
A hint of his own
Nobody
situation.
knew till the end.
Hold on, Natalie. Jim,
Okay.
Jim,
Yeah.
I think you should go in and go out.
Okay, I'm gonna leave quickly and
Yeah.
join. Fern, perhaps you can concentrate.
Yep. Okay. All righty. I'm sorry about that. Jim has to move to a better neighborhood. He lives down the street from me.
I'm all for that. I love it.
Hold on.
I love your smile, ma'am. You're such pretty, good, beautiful lady. Welcome.
All right, here we go. Jim, unmute yourself.
And I'll even let you see what I look like. You may
Okay.
regret it.
Let's try it again.
Did I miss anything? Okay. I hope this is better. I'm sorry about
It is.
that. Okay. So who's next to make a comment?
I think you.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, let's just continue with what Natalie said. He didn't know that the same fate was going to befall him, but it's an indication as our understanding as viewers increases as the film moves along. So we have the hindsight comes to us later than that.
It was right there in the room.
No, it wasn't in the room because
He doesn't know what's going to happen, but he knows that when anyone tells a story from the past, it's never the truth 100%, unless it's happened to that person themselves.
Look, I think we're talking about emotional truth and factual truth. If we say there's no truth at all, then I think we're lost, as we've experienced loss for the last 5 years. So there is such a thing as reality, but the nuances of interpersonal relationships are such that they are veiled and they are hard to decipher, and they are not. You don't always have the information that you need to understand. When I heard him say that in class, I didn't think, oh, that's going to happen to him. You know, I had to watch 30 more minutes of the movie to realize maybe that happened to him.
You're talking about nuances, but this was about secrets. They were deep, dark secrets. It wasn't just nuances.
Right.
And the corrosive effect of secrets.
Well, they weren't corrosive to Tony, except that he kind of festered under loose. A girl for 40, 50 years. And we question the corrosive effects of the letter too. So the problem is that he's deprived from understanding what Adrian really felt because he doesn't get the diary. So he's provoked enough. He has to try and get it from Charlotte Rampling, from Victoria. And I think somebody put their finger on it. Why is she so angry? And I can explain that. If it is indeed anger, I think she's surprised at how clueless he is for not knowing. And I think she's unwilling to relive the pain of the experience by explaining to him, who was a distant accessory to the fact. So in many ways, that would indicate that he didn't cause the suicide, and he didn't cause the pregnancy, and he didn't drive Adrian to Sarah, the mother. In a way, my take on it is that Tony inflates his own importance in the story and tries to insinuate himself into it. And Victoria, as Charlotte Rampling, resents it because you've been out of the picture for so long, buddy, you don't know. So quit trying to understand because you don't understand the pain we've been through.
She's pretty narcissistic too, though, expecting that he's going to know what went on.
Does she
because because it's affected her. He doesn't know.
Well, wait, how does I mean, the story has affected her, the pregnancy, the birth.
I mean, she was betrayed by her mother, not just her boyfriend and her mother. It was a terrible betrayal. And she expected somehow that which affected her, everybody else ought to know about. Well, he didn't.
I think you did a good job of explaining her anger, because she's the real victim. She was the one who was most betrayed by two people she loved.
But not by him.
Right, but that's why his entrance into her life and intruding into her decisions as to how to deal with her mother's death and the diary and the suicide is like, you're a fly from my past, buddy, you know, but not to him. And that's why I brought up the fact that he's of central importance to us, because if this story tells us anything about human connection, it tells us that he learned a little, but not a lot. You know, he helps his daughter through the pregnancy. He's less clueless. The daughter says, you did a good job. And he says, well, I'm not irrelevant to this family yet. And Margaret even tries to make up. She sends him the gold watch with the letter, let's have lunch in the end. You know, it's very, that's not a great part of the storytelling. It's unclear because it's just signed
Brad
M.
wants to say something. Unmute, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that he believes that this curse that he's put on them is the source for the tragedy that's befallen Adrian. But in fact, we know that it's the mother's sin. It's the mother's sin that goes down generations to her daughter, to her grandson, to the son, and to Adrian, who have all been destroyed by her sin, the mother's sin. And when we see, and we have that powerful image when they're driving out, they're leaving, and they focus on her hand, the mother's hand. I thought that was really, really a power. It's all these sins, all this tragedy stems from the mother and her lust.
Okay,
Well,
that got a bunch of people ready to speak. So Steve Zimmerman, Melissa, and Art.
Okay, thanks. That's not what's causing me to speak, but actually, I'm going to harken back to the first question, which kind of got lost about me. And Jim, I kind of agree with some of what you said. I kind of disagree with some of what you said. I thought Jim Broadbent did a great job acting, though he's very hard to relate to for reasons everybody said. I mean, he's kind of adult. He seems to have no self-insight, which is why I struggle with seeing him as a narrator. I keep thinking of the Beatles song, Nowhere Man, and he seems to pretty much fit the bill. Okay, and my notion of a narrator, although they're kind of outside and objective and have an overview, there's a background of insight there that is kind of normal, and I don't see that with him. In a way, his wife, the divorced wife, Margaret, seemed to me in a way a narrator. She's like a house critic for his life, and I kind of related to her a lot. Some people have suggested that there's no such thing as historical analysis, which I don't get. I mean, there's like 2,000 years of conventional historical scholarship, and that actors throughout history don't have that self-insight. That's part of the problem why there's so many people getting killed in the human species. Yes, I kind of related to the teacher at the beginning who's around the apple and trying to conquer questions, and someone saying, well, you can never really understand anything about history because you have to be there. Well, I don't really agree with that. Okay. Anyways, those are some of the points I wanted to make.
Thank you. Melissa, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Steve, I agree. I thought of Jim Broadbent as an unreliable narrator. So I didn't know what to take as truth and what to take as not truth throughout the whole movie. But there was a question that I wanted to ask, and I wanted to get other people's feedback because I think I missed this part, and it made the rest of the movie harder for me to understand. Obviously, we just asked a question about the mom, and I don't understand why she bequeathed anything to him in her will. And I feel like that's fundamental to me understanding the rest of the movie, because I'm sort of taking it that she was sort of just an agent of chaos ready to wreck her daughter's life. Is there another way I should be looking at this that makes more sense than that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way that we should be looking at it. So what did the film encourage us to look at? And the film has to stand or fall based upon our reactions to it. That's not a problem for me. I don't think the mother's an agent of chaos. She is an agent in the film. I'd rather somebody else take that on.
I'm going to take it for a second.
Okay.
And then all right. I think the mother was horrifying what she did. It's narcissistic, it's vicious, it's wounding, traumatizing. It was horrible. And she was a narcissist and she made trouble. And she just, she left money. I think you're saying, unless she was doing it to continue to create chaos. I'm sure she created chaos her whole life. She didn't just go do this one thing, sleep with her daughter's boyfriend, and that was the one mean thing she did.
Well, excuse me, but the wave was a wave to Tony as a young man. So she was sort of trolling for young men as her daughter brought them before her.
Yeah, but she didn't care that it was her daughter's boyfriend.
No.
She didn't care at all.
Okay. One thing the film did not do was give us a motivation for her loneliness and why she had to do that, other than the father being kind of a, I don't know.
I don't think there could be an excuse that existed for doing that to one's child.
Yeah, I don't think that she willed the diary to Tony to continue to wreak havoc in death. I think that Tony was next in line of the boyfriends, and she wanted him to understand why Adrian killed himself. Because I don't know if it was expiation or what, but I think he was the next in line, the one that was left because Adrian was gone, who she could bequeath an understanding of her own life. But her own life was a bit of a cipher. All we know is that she obviously, didn't have a great relationship with her husband and preferred younger men. That's all we know about her.
No, we know she was willing to do that to her daughter.
I don't think she acted. It was not an act of vengeance against her daughter. It was an act of selfishness.
Sleeping with her daughter's boyfriend was just a little act. All right, I made my point. Art would like to speak, and then Bruce.
It's a piece of champagne.
What's the?
I just needed to ask what we were supposed to take from that furtive, waist-high, horizontal wave. Was that communicating to him an invitation for him to
Yes,
be with
I think it was. We don't know that. And the first time he leaves the estate, we don't see the wave.
That's right.
It's told in a flashback later.
Correct.
So it's meant to be veiled, and it's her reaching out to him. I think we can be sure of that. It's not her reaching out to Adrian or anybody else. But obviously Adrian came along after Tony.
And her advice to him not to let Veronica get away with much. She repeats that to him.
Yeah, but that's a bit of a mystery to me. What does that mean? Not having read the novel, I don't know. Look, it's not a perfect story, but because it leaves us with all these questions. But to a certain extent, that's to its credit. To this extent, we're confused about the facts or the story. It's not.
It emphasizes that we can never know just what the truth is and what happened.
Okay, let's go there, because if we can never know what the truth of the past is, what does that tell us about how we should live our lives now? I mean, I think we're headed towards the lesson that we can glean from the film. It's like we all have monsters in the closet and relatives we despised or loved but couldn't say or didn't love us. Families are complicated. Every family is dysfunctional in its own way, according to Dostoevsky. And so if that's a fact of life, what do we do as sentient, sensitive human beings to deal with those we are close to, those we love, and those in our family? I don't buy that we're all unknowable. What I buy is that we all don't make enough effort to know each other. That's my beef, certainly with my own family and with most of the people I encounter. why is Anthony Tony so oblique in his awareness of other people? He doesn't really get his daughter's pregnancy or the false delivery, the false contractions in the beginning. He doesn't understand. It should have happened, and it didn't. It's like the guy is all I can say is, I know why Margaret divorced him. And he even asks her, why did you divorce me? And she can't answer because he's too clueless to understand. So it's very solipsistic. So I'm certainly not a fan of Anthony's.
So we have three people waiting: Bruce, Madonna, and Natalie, in that order. Bruce, unmute yourself, and Frank.
Hello. The conversation's going all over the place, and I had things to say now about 4 or 5 different
That's
things.
okay. Just lean in.
I will make the point that this entire conversation is really what the movie was trying to say at the very beginning when Adrian talks about history, in that we're talking about why did the mother do this and why did this person do that, and the screenwriter hasn't told us, didn't tell us these things. So we are making up the same history that is talked about at the beginning of the movie, and we don't know. I mean, I would agree with Fern that I think the mother was a complete narcissist, and I think she wanted to, create more havoc and chaos. I know Jim doesn't agree with this, from the grave, because she seemed to enjoy stirring up the pot, and that's my opinion, but I don't know, and Jim doesn't know, and Fern doesn't know, and we're just making this all up like everybody else.
Making it up.
That's what makes it a Jewish film. She was a tough level.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of a moral, what we take away from it is that we can't know, and we don't know everything about anything going on, including things going on in our own families. And it's better if we withhold judgment about other people and about what's going on. And at the end of the day, we can just treat people, with respect, which gets me to the very end of the movie when he invites the postman in for a cup of coffee.
Right.
Which is the symbol. I mean, there's 2 big symbols. One is his watch stops working, which sort of represents his life up to that moment when he was, I mean, let's face it, he's a bit of an asshole. He's stalking this old girlfriend, for whatever reason, and not because he really wants to know the truth. He's still attracted to her. She represents his youth and, a fantasy about something. And he's stalking her, which is, completely obnoxious. And it's not until, and then his watch stops, which sort of represents that part of his life is over now, and he gets the new watch. And he has a new life, and it's symbolized by inviting the postman in for a cup of coffee, which is a very simple, sweet thing to do. A guy that he slammed the door on earlier on in the movie.
Right.
But ultimately, we can't know, and we can continue to talk about and make up stories, but we can't know about him, his wife. What?
That's what Jews do. They make up stories.
That's my wife. Is Janet?
I said the same thing. That's what Jews do. They make up stories and they talk about.
Well, look, we have 27 participants tonight, and we haven't heard 28 of them.
Okay.
So I'm not so sure this is a Jewish story.
I would love to hear from people that haven't talked, and thank God we're not trying to decide what to have for dinner tonight.
So
Okay.
Madonna hasn't spoken yet, and she goes, and then we have a few people who have: Natalie, Frank, and Brad. And if I missed anybody, raise your hand in the chat and I'll try and catch you.
Thank you so much.
Steve Greenberg.
Thank you, Fern, and thank you, Bruce and Janet and Jim and everybody. I think that Bruce is so spot on about not judging people and loving people and being kind, because you don't know what everybody's situation is in life. Plus, Jim asked the question, what are we supposed to do according to this film in our lives now, right in the moment? I say play a love song, sing a love song, healing melody, because we all, God knows, need healing. And I'm going to leave with that because I'm glad we're not eating dinner. Okay, thank you so much for everything.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Who's next?
Let's go with Steve Greenberg, who hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll do Natalie, Frank, and Brad.
Okay, am I on?
You are
Yeah.
on.
Thanks. I want to apologize in advance if I offend anybody, because my father said I was often wrong but never in doubt, and I've been living that down ever since. So I think Tony's getting a bit of a bum rap here. First of all, he's the only protagonist we've got. He's played by Jim Broadbent, and he's British. He was so polite to that snotty customer who wanted a Leica for $5 in the store in the beginning that he won me over there, and I like him as an actor anyway. I thought the end of this movie, which was the crux of the whole story, was very muddled. So the first thing I did was I Googled the film and read a review, a professional reviewer's opinion, who said that the flaw in the book and in the screenplay was, and in the movie, was that writing a nasty letter when you're 19 years old is not the sin of a lifetime. Who hasn't done that or worse? And what he did was, even if he did put a curse on them, which he didn't really, he just, I mean, if you believe in superstition, maybe it worked. I come from Pennsylvania, and the Amish have these hex signs on their barns, but I've never read of anything actually happening because of them. So he wrote a nasty letter, and he wished that his ex-girlfriend and Adrian had an unhappy child or a cursed child or something like that. That's not what happened. Even the curse he aimed at them didn't take effect. I thought his ex-wife was a lot snottier than she had to be towards him. He's British, and he's pretty much polite to everybody. I mean, I've been a lot ruder to people in that postal carrier, and I don't get the finger all the time. So I really think there was a serious flaw in the structure of the story. I was a screenwriter, and I taught screenwriting at UCLA Extension for 20 years, and that's what would have come up in one of the classes. Is this muddled ending? And I wasn't the only one who was questioning about that, because so was this critic that I read on the Google site about it.
How might it have ended differently if you could have reworked the script with the writer?
I would have changed the letter. I would have made the letter a lot nastier and more pointed than just wishing somebody. I mean, if wishes, you can get kicked off of some of the political opinion sites. I've been kicked off 5 times, not for advocating violence, but wishing that lightning would strike Trump or something like that. And people said, "Oh, you're advocating violence." Well, as far as I know, wishing or hoping or trying to inspire natural events is not the same as violence, or inciting violence or encouraging a riot on January 6th. So I think that the whole idea of this letter needs to be, and also the fact that what really ruined the daughters and Adrian's lives and caused Adrian's suicide was the sin of the mother, which this kid had nothing to do with and didn't know about. And the reason he was trying to insert himself into this woman's life is she legally was blocking an inheritance that he deserved to have. The woman's lawyer said, "Yeah, you're entitled to it, but she won't give it to you, and we're not going to do anything about it." So I think there were flaws in the story that skewed it towards us making Tony more unsympathetic than he deserved to be. And I just wanted to mention to Jim and whoever the other editor was, in the flashback structure, I thought there was one unusual shot. I only saw one shot at that party at night. There was the flashbacks when the boy met Victoria for the first time outside. And there was, I think, one shot where the older Tony is seen in that exterior.
Right. Yes.
And it was unusual because it stood out, because it was the only time they had him flash back to being in the scene in his older self himself.
No, there was one more, Steve, and that is,
that's what I'm asking.
The older self was watching the mother wave to the younger self in the car. They did the same trick there. And it's a bit of magical realism, but what does it mean? It just means
I didn't mind it. I thought if they were going to go there once, stylistically, they might have done it a little bit more. In other words, start with just the flashbacks of the boy when he's young, and then maybe done it more than twice, because it sort of stood out. I only caught it the one time, and it's kind of stood out like a sore thumb just from an editing style for the movie.
Well, it was a bit jarring. I agree with you. Bruce can chime in on that. It's not really an editorial choice. It's a directorial choice. And when it happened again, I accepted it because I'd been trained to accept it from the earlier usage.
Yeah.
Basically, what those repetitions mean is he's beginning to understand as the adult what the younger man was going through. He's finally.
I like that concept. In other words, if they had gradually inserted him as an older person back into these flashbacks a little bit more gradually and a little bit more repeatedly and extended them longer and longer, I would have gotten that point better.
Maybe, but I'm glad they didn't, because it would have become just a trick in my anticipating seeing it a third time. Bruce, what's your feeling on that?
I quite liked it. I believe there were 3 times. There was once in the car and walking through the party, and then I'm pretty sure there was a third time, but I'm not remembering where it is. And I found it quite refreshing, and I understood completely that it was his thinking about the party, and now he's in it. And yes, it's a trick, but it didn't take me out of the movie. It made the movie a little more interesting to me.
I'm going to ask that Cindy jump ahead because the other people have spoken. Cindy, speak first, and then we'll hear from Natalie, Frank, and Brad, and anybody else who wants to speak.
Okay, a little bit different thought of the whole issue of not being there. Do we really know what happened in history? Thinking of the Torah and what happened at Mount Sinai, and did the Exodus really happen? Did it happen as it is written? Is there a different version? Did it happen at all? And that, to me, that whole comment is just so much of what's going on in Torah study. You know, we read the Torah, but did it really happen the way it's written?
Well,
and what is truth?
Right. That's a great question that we covered in Torah study this morning. And that is it the received word of God, or is the tradition of Judaism that we reinterpret this text assembled by human beings and constantly reinsert in it our evolving values? And this is a major heavy duty issue. Rabbi Davids this morning did mention that when the Reform Synagogue platform was established, probably in the 1880s in Pittsburgh, they specifically said that the Torah is not the received word of God and should not be treated as such, that it's a document that is, as the other scholar this morning said, it's a source book of ideas. It's not a textbook of how to do it. And in a way, it's sort of giving Reform Judaism a chance to evolve and to enlighten and to be more relevant and, you know, more vivid and more useful to us in our daily lives today.
So in the movie, as he picks up pieces of the truth, he rewrites his impression of his history.
I think he comes up to speed. You know, he comes into sync with reality. He's finally realized, oh my God, this was going on and I didn't have a clue. And my 2 other buddies whom I, you know, reached out to her on the internet with, none of us had a clue that this was going on.
I'm not sure that he got that was the end of where truth stopped and started. Truth, I'm sure there's more to the story that we didn't know. Truth is evolving. It isn't just that he got up to speed. He got up to speed and there was probably more, and there'll be more shifts. We have shifts in our reality all the time as time passes and things change.
But this was a closed story, and it didn't anticipate what is Victoria's future. It did anticipate what his future with Margaret is, and his relationship with his daughter. But I think past confusion is enough. We don't have to complicate the film with anticipation of future events, which are really outside its realm. And you know, we've come across this before, where people say, "Well, what happens next?" And the point is, sorry, you have to invent it for yourself.
I wasn't making the point about the film. I'm saying that there isn't an end to stories. Our end to stories is when we die, and that's the end. But the
That's the end of
stories
our
are
story, right?
evolving.
We're part of this continuum, and we evolve along with it as much as we can, and it will continue without us. So it is certain, you know, looking at life that way should bring a certain amount of humility to our importance. At the same time, we never want to disengage ourselves from being part of the contemporary life that we share or don't share.
All right, Natalie, Frank, and Brad.
Okay, I wanted to put this answer to Melissa. Melissa, the question about the diary. Nobody's talked about the diary. To me, the diary was very important because that's what started the whole plot. He found out that that mother had left the diary to him and he wanted it. And that's how he found his ex-girlfriend. And that's how the story proceeds on and on.
He did say he didn't, he's asked, why do you want it so badly? And he says, I don't know why, I just want it.
He wanted the diary, right? So
yeah, well, he wants to find out what Julian felt.
In the diary was the truth. And to me, as I said in the beginning, this movie is all about how we do not know the truth, really, about anyone we know. We do not know what people think when they're with you. We don't know what people tell you in the past. So, Melissa, this book, in the diary, the mother tells the truth of what happened. She wants his friend, the one who died's friend, to know the truth. And perhaps if you want to connect this with religion, as you said in the beginning or whatever, perhaps she wanted to get something from God, that she really was telling the truth now, and maybe she wouldn't be punished so much.
Maybe she wanted to absolve. Maybe she wanted to absolve herself of the guilt she felt
herself
for wrecking other people's lives, and that's why she wanted the diary to be passed on to somebody other than her daughter, who knew the truth too well.
Right.
It's all conjecture. It doesn't matter, and it's fine that it makes us wonder about this. The question, Natalie, to you and to others is, okay, so if there's this relativism and this inability to know the truth, what do we do with it? How do we move forward? How do we live our lives? I think we have to look at Margaret and Tony at the end and the daughter. Remember, this is all about a child, right? The daughter being pregnant is no coincidence that there was a pregnancy at the heart of the movie. What do we do with the next generation? What do we do with the relativism? It's a very tough question, and some people turn to fundamentalist religion to make it easier for themselves. But how do we live? The conservatives would say moral relativism. I don't think that's a valid argument anymore. It's kind of archaic in these culture wars today. But Natalie, what are you going to do with that? So what if we can't know the truth? How are you going to live your life? You've got daughters and grandchildren. You're muted.
You're on mute, Natalie, you're on mute.
I don't want to argue with you. It's just that
we're not arguing.
We interpret things differently when we see movies. And to me, the big point, as I said before, I don't want to repeat myself, which was carried through, is about truth. You want to turn it other ways. Yes, we can see it the way we want. That's the way I saw it. I saw it to the end with the diary. That's how I saw everything connected. You don't have to agree with me, but that is the way I interpret the film.
Natalie, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying
it's not a matter of disagreeing. It's a matter of how we interpret differently.
You and I are not seeing the movie differently. What I'm asking you as a person who reacted emotionally to the movie, what does this make you do to live differently going forward? Because you've made some very important philosophical and emotional statements about truth and reality, and I think implicitly relationship.
I don't think it's going to change what I've known for a very long time, is that we do not know the truth about a lot of things that people tell you. That's it.
Okay, we don't have to pursue that any further.
No.
I'm sorry, it wasn't
We
clear.
have some people who'd like to speak, so let's get to that. Frank, you're next. Unmute.
Unmute. As opposed to the very interesting philosophical discussions that preceded, I have two technical questions. I'd like to talk about. One has bothered me, and I wonder if other people were affected by it. In the restaurant scene where a younger man is escorting a tall, blonde, older man who looks just like an older concept of Adrian, he's wearing the vest with the various patches on it.
Yeah, that's the son. That's the
Pardon?
child. That's the child.
That's the child. Yeah, we learn later.
Child.
But I thought that mixed me up because I thought Adrian committed suicide. This guy looks just like an older Adrian. When did people realize, that this is the son?
Well,
I'm sorry. That part confused me. Was I the only one confused?
No, in the second scene in the bar, the group leader, who is a fully functioning adult who isn't compromised, says, "Oh, you have it wrong. That guy is not Victoria's son. It's Sarah's son.
Mm-hmm.
It's her brother."
Yeah.
And suddenly the whole film breaks open. And if you watch how stunned Broadbent is in that point, you realize this is the pivot point of of the whole film.
Sure, of course.
It's at the very end.
Did anyone else? Okay, I guess I'm the only. The second kind of observation is that the pacing of this movie, the way it was, the storytelling aspect of it, I think was distinctly English or British. I can't see this having been made in the U.S. or whatever. Now, for those of you in the film industry, do you perceive it the same way? Does this production have a kind of a British tilt to it?
Well, it's extremely understated and veiled, and the people are also understated. So I think you could say it's safely pretty British. Yeah. And that nobody in this country would have made it with those actors because they're British stars, and they're great actors, but no studio would have made this.
But the slope, the pacing of it, the reviewing, whatever, it was too slow.
Okay. Did you see the film? A year ago, more than a year ago, we saw an Indian film called The Photograph about a lower caste photographer courting a middle class young woman. And his grandmother comes to visit because he's pretended that they're engaged when they're really not. The Photograph. That film, The Photograph, had the same director, Ritesh Batra. I find it remarkable because you see the same understatement of emotion, yet you read the faces so thoroughly in that film. Those of you who haven't seen The Photograph, the couple films called The Photograph, this is just Photograph. I highly recommend that you see it. It's a very extremely subtle, extremely British, slow walk through the formation of a new relationship. It doesn't mean they're going to get married at the end, but it's how do people overcome the little hurdles and make so many middle steps in order to believe that they have a relationship. Granted, the grandmother's a comic foil in the whole movie, and she's delightful because she sees more than they do. But definitely we're seeing it's the same director, and he exercised the same understated touch. So, and I don't know much about him. He could be an Indian who grew up in Britain, but very accomplished, very skilled director. And I can't recommend his other films enough.
Thank you.
Brad, Howard, Steve Zimmerman.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the title of the book and the movie again. It's the sense of an ending, and to talk about it in terms of truth and in terms of somebody talked about the muddled ending of the movie. I think they're missing the point. I think what we're saying here in this movie is that we can't get to the absolute truth, but we can get a sense of the truth. We can approach the truth. We can't be Oedipus, who solves the riddle of the Sphinx. People talked about Midsummer Murder at the beginning today. We can't tie up a murder in an hour TV show. That's not life. What life is getting a sense of what the truth is and approaching that truth. And I think the movie does a very effective job of that.
I think that's a great observation. My take on the title was that it appears that understanding where this child came from is a sense of an ending of the story, but it's not really. So I think you're right. It feels like it might solve a mystery, but the real mystery is how is everybody going to continue on knowing what they know at this point?
Let me call on a couple people who haven't spoken, and then I'll get back to you, Steve. Howard, and then Risa, and then Steve.
I liked the movie. You know, by the end of it, I really felt I was glad I watched it. But I was really, for me personally, I have a real question about what I feel was the overuse of this flashback meme or whatever it is, as approach.
Yeah.
It was almost like you had to watch. It was really making you do a lot of work for very little gain, as far as I'm concerned. You had to be on the lookout for not miss even a 10-second little thing in the film. Could be an important breadcrumb that they put out for you to try to speculate on what was going on in the darn thing. And I don't feel that it added anything to
Bruce,
me.
you want to chime in on that?
All of that,
Bruce.
I like the very first flashback. I don't know if the first one, which was the mother putting the frying pan into the dish soap. That was odd and threw me, and I didn't know what that was about. It was just like, oh, we're going to have flashbacks, and that annoyed me because it was gimmicky and I didn't know. But the other flashbacks, or most of them, I enjoy. I mean, that's the structure of the storytelling, and I find it interesting. So no, it didn't confuse me. I mean, except for that one that I.
Well, maybe if they didn't do it that way, then the movie wouldn't have come out the way they wanted it to. But for me, I don't. I mean, I would have enjoyed it. I would have gotten more out of the movie if it was.
So you would be, but without the flashbacks, then you would never have seen him as a young man with the young girl. You would never have seen him making out in the car with her. How would you have structured the film without flashbacks?
Two things. Number one, I'm not saying no flashbacks.
Yes.
There's two possibilities. One is to go all the way, which I would not advocate, which is straight linear narrative. They could have started with one set of actors to show things and then another set to show things 20 years later. That wouldn't be good. The other is to, yes, flashbacks are fine, but don't make them so, it's almost like working a crossword puzzle for the viewer to figure out what the heck's going on.
I think you're right, Howard, and there is a function to that, and I think it's very intentional on the filmmaker's part, and that is the slight distress or dissonance that you felt can be interpreted as merely a tensioning device that enticed other people to stay with the film and drives them deeper. I think Bruce will agree with me that a little bit of confusion is often helpful as long as it's eventually resolved. And this film tantalized us. It teased us with a little piece of the past and amplified that over subsequent flashbacks. So you had to enjoy waiting for it or be satisfied with the delayed gratification of the explanation of that part of history. It's a stylistic choice. The guy definitely chose it. He didn't do it in Photograph, the Indian film, at all. That's a straight narrative. We've seen it before. And again, that's why I started out the discussion with, this is different from a film that relies on flashbacks, because it's not about just solving the riddle of the past for us, the viewer. It's about what is the effect of solving the riddle on Tony and his wife and his daughter. And I think that's the takeaway from the film, apart from the philosophical nature of history and what is truth. It's like, now that all our questions, or most of our questions, have been resolved by the facts revealed, we're caught up. And that's why I focused on Tony at the end, because he's a much softer, kinder, gentler guy. And he's not even a Republican. So thank you, Brad.
Weren't the flashbacks also Tony's recollections of how things happened? They might not objectively be.
Many were, but remember, the film is also structured by the conversations with various meetings with his ex-wife, where he's telling her the story. So yes, he is the narrator, and you're seeing it from his point of view as he knows it. But I think the whole story relies on our accepting his narration, his flashbacks as the truth.
Yeah.
Remember, his wife says, why are you just telling me this now after decades of marriage? This seems to be really important to you. And it would be important to me to know about your prior loves. So it's just, it's a technique. I think it was engaging in this film. It was a puzzlement at times, but I think it carried its own weight, and we survived any confusion because the story's so interesting, the performances were so great, the characters so compelling. You know, it worked on me, and it worked on many other people. If it was disturbing to you, it's legitimate. I'm not saying it wasn't, but this is a calculus that the filmmakers make when they're putting it together, is how much insecurity is enough, and when have we, you know, alienated people, and when are we just teasing them along? The final comment on that is
Risa's had her hand up, and I want to give her a chance to speak.
Okay, let me just finish before Risa. That you always, as a filmmaker and a storyteller, you always want to be a little half step ahead of the audience. You want them hungering for more at every instance, but not so confused they're lost and give up on the story. And that's the fine act that happens in writing and directing and in editing a film, is that you're honing that balance, that tightrope that you walk in every scene. Risa.
Well, the conversation now is more on wrapping up the movie, but I had a couple of things I wanted to say. There was no question in my mind when Tony walked away and got into the car, that scene where she waves, there was no question in my mind that he was aware that she wanted to engage with him. And he said no. Now, she was successful, if you will, with Adrian. The proof of that to us was the child. So we know that it's not just a story, that she did, in fact, have intercourse with Adrian. And Adrian, remember the person who said Adrian may have killed himself because Victoria was pregnant. And he made that up. But it gave me a flash that was a very important statement that she made. The other thing is, I think that Sarah's her name, right? The mother?
Yes.
That she wanted him to have the diary in order to know that Tony had turned her down, but Adrian didn't. And this is kind of an up yours. And when Victoria read the whole thing, she had no desire to have him know this about her mother. That's the way I saw the movie. And I thought the fact that the son from Adrian was disabled in some way, you're talking about it as a curse. I didn't see it as a curse. I saw it as telling Tony that you weren't wrong. You weren't wrong. This family's a little bit off. So you stayed away. The other thing is, I'll tell you a very funny thing. Last night, we were having Shabbat dinner with my son. And my granddaughter, who was 14, every time we get together, she wants to know stories about her father. And I always have stories. So I told her a story about the fact that when he was 4.5 years old, he fell off of a slide in preschool and he broke his collarbone. And that's a story I've told many times because it's tied up with the birth of my daughter. And when he was crying in school, the teachers thought it was because I was in the hospital and there was a new baby. Ron said, "You've been telling that story. Now I'm going to tell you the truth. The teachers told you that I fell off a slide. What really happened is that I climbed up on a jungle gym, which I had no right to be on, and I fell on my head. And they didn't want you to know that that's what happened." This is a story from 50 years ago, 52 years ago. And I learned the actual truth last night for the first time because Ron never wanted to tell what the teachers had lied about. So that's part of this business about history. So I tied it into the movie.
And maybe Ron was telling you the truth now, or maybe he remembered it slightly wrong.
Not Ron.
But I think you make a point that the diary being willed to Tony may have been her way of either apologizing or telling the truth about the situation, so it could be known. Maybe it's a symbol of her guilt, not of her intentional torture of those who survived her.
Could be.
The openness is okay. You know, it's in a way it's good. It gives us a rich palette of possibilities, as long as it doesn't take us off track too much.
I enjoyed the whole mystery. I enjoyed the whole movie.
Yeah, by the way, the book won the Man Booker Prize in 1912, which is the most prestigious British literary prize, and is considered his greatest novel. Anybody else?
Yeah.
No.
Madonna and Steve, and then we're close to 9 and we'll need to wrap up. Madonna,
Okay.
quickly.
By George, straight away, being a British, I just love it. But I have a confession to everybody. I never watched the film, but I tuned in because you guys are so on it with your narratives and your explanations are so entertaining, and I'm learning so much. And I just love it. So thank you, everybody. But I didn't get the chance to watch it, but I'm going to now. But oh my gosh! But I will say this: no mother that ever intentionally hurts her children has any respect for me. I will leave you with that. And thank you, Jim. Thank you, Fern. Thank you, Reese. I'm so glad your son's okay. And the true story finally comes out, right? Now you know the story. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Steve, you're going to get the last word before Jim gets the last word.
Real briefly, I try to be brief. One, with regard to flashbacks, I liked it. I think it's kind of Freudian and subconscious, and it's real. And that's what people do. They try to rework history in their own minds or redo the way things turned out. Some of those, I can't recall the exact flashbacks, but a couple of them, he actually changed events from what actually happened. But that's what people do. It's very, and I thought it was engaging. The other, Steve, your comments were not the least bit offensive. I appreciate them, but I kind of disagree. I think you're misconstruing, in my opinion, this whole letter, the role of the letter. Nowhere in the movie is there any causal connection set forth that this letter caused, Adrian to commit suicide. This is something that's in his own mind, okay, in Tony's own mind. He's struggling with this. He says the one friend he wanted to stay in touch with was Adrian, who took his life. He kind of wants to know what happened, and he's deprived of that when, Veronica burns the book. And so I don't think there's a causal connection there. This is just something within his own head he's struggling with. Lastly, I observed that there's something ironic about the plot structure in that because the diary was burned and the facts were kept from Tony, he goes through all these adventures during the course of the movie and engages, frankly, in inappropriate conduct in various ways, including the last bar scene when he doesn't understand the basic relationships between the people. Had that book not been burned and he got to read it first, a lot of the other things would never have happened. Okay, so to me, there's kind of an ironic aspect built in otherwise. That's it.
Okay, we do have to wrap up now. This was a great discussion, far-ranging as it might have been. I think it's a testament to what a well thought through and sensitively realized film can do in the emotions and different ideas that it produces in all of us. Our next discussion will be on September 11th. It's between the holidays, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not that that matters to me, although it's a thoughtful time for many of us. And the clergy have asked me to select a film that is on a more Jewish-centric theme than something like tonight. And I don't know what it's going to be. There is a film called The Interpreter that I'm very fond of, starring Jiří Menzel, who was a Czechoslovakian filmmaker and director, part of the Czech School of Filmmaking in the 60s, came over. Well, actually, I think he stayed there. And Peter Simonishek, who's a well-established German actor. And they play a Jew and a Gentile German who go on a road trip together to discover the German's father's Nazi past and the changes it brings about in both of them. There may be another film, but you'll hear from me very soon about what that will be, September 11th. And then on the 25th, I believe we'll have another film. We're going to do about 2 a month now. Don't know what that's going to be. It may be Glenn Close and forgetting his name from Monty Python, but he's great. The Wife, about a Nobel Prize winning author and his wife as a ghostwriter for him. If you like tonight, let me know. If you have any suggestions for films, let me know. I'm sorry that not everybody spoke tonight. I'd really love to hear from you. Your opinions are all important. And I think that we teach each other about the films. So that's why I try not to talk too much. I hope that the ideas other people bring to the interpretation of a movie help you appreciate it more. So thanks a lot for participating. It's great to see the new people from Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. I think that was Carol and Esty. Did we have anybody else from the Pacific Northwest? Okay, well, we had a lot of new people respond. It didn't turn into attendance, but tell those other people up there in Seattle and the Puget Sound about your experiences tonight. And hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night. Thank you, Fern, by the way.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Jim.
Night.